Hey guys, Joe here. Before we get into this episode, I wanted to take a moment to let you know that Matthew and I originally planned for our conversations with our guests to be one episode, but due to the length of the conversations and rather than having an overly long episode, we're going to be moving the coverings section of the conversation to next episode. I'm going ahead and letting you know now because we talk about getting into coverings during this episode, but again, that'll end up being next episode. So, with that said, thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy. Welcome back to the Aviation RC Noob Podcast. You found us. My name is Joe.
And I'm Matt.
We're here to be with you along your journey and to share our experiences in RC aviation. If you have any questions, thoughts, or want to share a flight story, hit us up at aviationrcnoob@gmail.com. Now, buckle in. Let's take off.
All right, welcome back to episode 20, covering with our special guest, Chris McCallum. In this episode, Joe and I are going to be talking to our special guest and listener, Chris McCallum, who's also known as Battleaxe on the forums. He's also got a YouTube channel that shows us all the awesome things that he's been flying. We're going to talk to him about his beginning in the hobby and his journey so far, as well as we're going to talk about our list of to-dos and builds and stuff that we do with our remote control planes. And we're also going to talk about coverings. So without further ado, welcome, Chris. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you very much, man. Thanks for having me here. Really appreciate it. You guys are looking good.
Well, thank you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, face only a mother could love is what I've been told.
A face for radio is what they say, right? Good thing you're here.
Well,
It works.
That explains the podcast. That's for sure. Nice.
There you go. Excellent.
No, really, very excited to have you on, though.
Excellent. No, I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Good. Well, as always, we like to get into our flying stories. And so we kind of talk about what we've done. And it has been, Joe, how long has it been? We took a small break, right?
Yeah, 5 weeks. We took a break in there, and we talked about it at our 1 year wrap up episode. That there was a lot going on. It had been a year, and it would be advantageous to take a week off, take a episode cycle off. Really, it was supposed to be last Saturday that we were going to be releasing, but we this episode. But then we went ahead and pushed it back one more week due to some things that were going on, which I'll kind of talk about in a minute when we get into the fly stories.
Okay, easy enough. I'll tell you what, I don't know about you, Chris, but in the Carolinas, it has been just probably the rainiest stinking month that I think we've seen in a long time. It's been ridiculous. And it makes it really hard to get out and fly when you're trying to do a build challenge where you're trying to build and fly 4 different planes. So that's what I'm going to be talking about while I fly. But what about you, Chris? How's it been up there? Up in, where were you from?
Man, I'm up here in Canada, Alberta, Canada, man.
Alberta, Canada. Are you near any major city that anybody might find on a map? Or
Yeah, absolutely, man. Edmonton. It's the capital of Alberta, the capital city of Alberta. It's where we have our legislature, West Edmonton Mall. It's a really hot touristy sort of place, I guess.
Dude, that was like the giantest place, largest mall in North America, right? For a long while.
It was.
Wasn't
I think
it?
it held the title for a little bit. There was some competitors out there down south of the border in your kind of territory in California and that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I'm pretty sure there's larger ones out there now for sure.
Oh yeah, of course. Everybody's got to do a little bit bigger and a little bit crazier. I know some of them have like theme parks and that's ridiculous. Anyway, so if you don't mind, what you want to kick off our building and flying stories? What have you been doing for the last month or so?
Actually, we did have a bit of a cold snap there where it was like it got really cold, like minus 20 Celsius. So you're looking at
Oh, jeez.
stupid cold, right? So
Yeah, that's
It was
typical.
there was a few weeks of that, so you kind of have to wait that out. I mean, you could go out there and fly for a couple minutes, maybe get frostbite on your thumbs or however it works out. I guess you set yourself up, but it is what it is, right?
Uh-oh.
The lipos, I'm
Yeah, I
pretty sure
guess
they
so.
don't like those kind of temperatures either. I can
Mm-mm.
guarantee you the props don't. If you have a belly lander, you're losing props every time you go to land. So you better have a handful of
Oh
those,
my
right?
gosh.
Yeah. So,
Right.
but so yeah, I was going through that. I was doing a little bit of building. I did build the Sea Duck. So the Sea Duck, man, that's my fourth build on that one, man.
Oh my God. Yeah, you love that thing. I'll tell you what. I remember you did the what was it, this stole challenge or something, and you built one of those and you took off and landed it how many times
56
in on one
actually.
battery?
Yeah, it was
Oh my
56 on one
God.
battery. A 3S battery, I think it was too.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
tell
it
you what,
was.
you gave me a lot of respect for the Sea Duck when I saw that happen. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Actually, you know
That
what?
is
I didn't
that
even
was
think it
awesome.
would go that far. Tell you the truth, I thought the 30 tops, 30 landings on a
Yeah, I
top.
know,
So,
right?
like, I'm no expert at landing, man. There was some wobbly landings in there for sure. So,
I'll tell you what. If you ever get a chance, go look for his video on that because it's fun to watch. You captured. I mean, you were out there. The video captures every single one of those landings. I think you count them as you go and stuff. It
yeah,
was
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Well, you kind of had to do that for the challenge. I actually, you know what?
Yeah.
It was kind of unfortunate because I did try how much weight it could carry challenge, and
Mm-hmm.
I strapped a couple water bottles to the top of it. And I tried just one, like that was my first attempt. Just two water bottles. This
Mm-hmm.
this is going to be pretty much equal to what its weight is on its own, kind of idea. So I'm doubling the
Right.
weight of the plane on the same wing load, kind of idea. And
Yeah.
man, she 4S, she struggled. Holy crap, there was a lot of runway that was
Oh
eaten
yeah.
up. And yeah, it was. And the landing, it wasn't tuned for like landing with a lot of weight. I should have had more flare in it, kind of idea. I'm not really too sure, but
Right.
it dropped like a rock. It took a lot of strength to get it up. I got it around to do a turn without tip stalling it, but coming back
Yeah.
down because it was downslope and you're coming down for the landing, you're going a lot faster
Mm-hmm.
now, right? And it's coming down heavy. It's not
Oh yeah.
there's no fluffing it off the snow or anything like that. So I kind of beat it up. I kind of beat that one up. So I was like, by the time I
Okay.
was going to build a new one, I was out of the challenge anyway, past deadline. So I was like, it was fun to do
Nice.
though. It was fun to do, man. It was that land. It kind of tested me, right? So it was,
Yeah, that looked like a fun challenge.
yeah, absolutely.
Nice. Well, okay. So you built a sea duck. What else? I mean, so my knowledge of you is that every time I turn around and think I'm cooking at building stuff, I turn around and see that you built like three or four. And usually you're building them. So what else are you working on this month?
Well, I was also I had the Mustang, that Master Series Mustang from Flight Test. It was an
Hmm.
awesome build. It was from Flight Test. It was my second build. There was the Spitfire that I did in the Seafire sort of livery. I did that,
It looks
and
so good.
that one crazy thing is I was almost scared to fly that one, and I'm glad I did because that inspired me to do the Mustang because I had crashed the Spitfire on like the third flight or something like that. So,
Right.
and it was just to the point where it was brittle anyway. Like I said, it sat in the shelf for probably, I don't know, man, 8 months maybe before I even flew it. So I think the foam board got all brittle and it just third landing in, it was
Oh,
just wings folded on it and stuff like that. So okay, no, not playing with that one anymore. But got into
okay.
doing the Mustang, and the Mustang was a lot of fun, man. I got maybe 20 flights out of that one before I'm always doing, things to push myself. So I do stupid stuff
Well,
with planes I
yeah.
shouldn't be doing it with, kind of idea. And Mustang being a faster scale plane, you probably shouldn't be doing inverted down the street kind of idea. So I don't know.
Yeah.
And of course, none of this is caught on film, right? It's just, you're doing it to practice to see if you can do it and put it on film, right? And make it look good.
Hmm.
Yeah, first
Yeah.
attempt. There's another warbird, right? So,
Yeah.
but it's
So okay, so I know Joe and I we haven't really gotten into the Mustang yet, but he and I have both flown the Spitfire, the original FT Spitfire. You've flown both.
mm-hmm.
What's your feeling on? And obviously you went with the Master Series. You have both the Master Series. I know you've flown. I think the original
Yep.
um, have you flown the basic one of both of those? Because I know they made a Mustang and a Spitfire that was basically that kind of simple fold over style wing and the pretty simple box fuse with a turtle deck.
Yeah, that was my first Spitfire that I built.
Okay.
Yeah, and I built that like really early into my introduction to the hobby kind of idea.
Oh wow, nice.
And it was my
What's your
breakout
feeling?
plane actually. I went from like the Mini Scout, the 3-channel Mini Scout. I went from
Yeah,
that one
yeah.
into the Spitfire, and the Spitfire I was like, I built it bank and yank like the 3-channel Mini Scout. There's no ailerons, right? It's all just rudder and elevator, right? So it's very simple.
Mm-hmm.
It has a lot of like Dutch roll to it and stuff like that, but you can keep it up for a full battery. You feel like your success, right? So, um,
Mm-hmm.
doing the Spitfire, that Spitfire too, man, that sat on the shelf for like 3 months even before I flew that one too. But it was like I was scared of it. It's almost like
Yeah.
it intimidated me sitting there, right? So I didn't want to.
Right.
This is the first one that I put a lot of time into to the plans. Everything was like, you know, I had it
Yeah.
down perfect, right? So I knew I was going to crash it, so I didn't want to fly it, right? I was scared of the thing, and then I finally flew it. I finally got the testicular fortitude to put it up in the air, and I chucked it up, and the thing was gorgeous right off the bat. Like it was built to fly, right? And it was easy to fly,
Yeah.
and it just
Yeah.
it just opened me up. It just like going from the success that I had of having a full battery to like I said, the Mini Scout, which is you know a challenge on its own at that point in time. It's like, man, I got this plane, I have it in the car, I'm here, I might as well, okay, let's do this, right? And then you chalk it up, and it's just like an aha moment, right? And it's like, holy crap, why didn't I do this 3 months ago, right? So
I had the
yeah,
exact same experience with mine. Like I can't tell you how long I put off building the Spitfire. I'm like, no, I'll save it for later. I heard warbirds were horrible, and then all of a sudden, I finally get like you said, get the chance to build it and say, okay, I'm just gonna do it. And then it goes up in the flat, and I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, why did I wait so long? This thing is amazing.
yeah.
Joe, I don't know. You didn't have to wait very long, and I certainly encourage you. Just like, no, just build it. You're gonna have a good time. Like, but what I know you had a similar experience. Like, you were expecting it to be a handful.
Yeah, I mean, it it was worrisome because it was going to be it. That ended up being my first real 4-channel. Aileron, rudder, and all that. And while my glider technically had all that, we kind of know how that went. So it was a little worrisome starting it, getting it going, but we flew together that first time, and it quickly became my favorite plane to have flown to that point, and now so far, like it was such a
Mm-hmm.
fun little bird to fly, and it does have some dihedral mixed into its design, so that really helps with it being a nicer plane and more fun, but it helps with those figuring out how to fly it, if you will.
Nice. So Chris, so between a Mustang and the Spitfire, do you have a preference right now?
Actually, you kind of go back and forth with it. Like out of the two Master Series, like pretty much back to back that I've built and flown, um, the Spitfire, I think if I had built the Spitfire as my second plane, the quality of the build would have been a lot better. Plus, not waited so long to fly it. I think my flight experience with it would have been better. Being able to dial it in, but knowing my experience with the Spitfire, this one, well, I wasn't really scared of this one at this point in time because I'm a lot further on in the hobby kind of idea. So
Yeah.
between the two of them, man, they both flew so well, and I think the Spitfire just by design is a bit more of an aerodynamic plane. So if speed is your thing, and I like speed, I think I'd do another Spitfire, and I'd do it. I'd probably customize it a little bit, kind of thing. Make a couple changes with it, but it was
Mm-hmm.
it was it didn't feel as draggy as the Mustang, just in the fact that the Mustang, it does have that big vent at the bottom, that kind of idea. But both planes were
Mm-hmm.
a lot of fun. Like to really compare it, it's not really apples and oranges. It's more like a Granny Smith compared to uh,
A Red Delicious.
yeah, any Red Delicious, exactly. It's same thing, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
It's just
Nice.
depends on what you go
Okay.
for. The scale looks that I got on the Mustang were a lot better than I did on the Spitfire. So on camera, man,
Mm-hmm.
that Mustang,
Yeah.
she really fired it off, right? So
Yeah, but that's like they were both beautiful, and I think you know it. They were both good looking planes. I'm sure they looked amazing in the air.
yeah,
To at least see you
yeah.
guys.
They
What?
a lot of times, just even seeing the silhouette of a Spitfire, you know, over a Mustang,
Mm-hmm.
it's just so recognizable. It's almost just looking at the silhouette as it's flying over you, that kind of stuff. It has that sort of
Yeah.
shape
Yeah.
to it, and it's you just have a kinship to it. It's, you know, it depends on what you like. If you like the Mustang, that might be your thing as well. You know, you never know.
Yeah. 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 I'm with you. So those weren't the only ones you've been building. Like I said, you generally tend to be a pretty busy builder, as it were, right?
Yeah. Since I'd crashed my fourth duck and that Mustang, I've also built a wing. So the wing itself, I don't even know if you could call it a wing. It's like an aileron elevator sort of style of plank sort of wing, kind of goblin-esque,
Okay.
if you're gonna look at it, kind of
Okay.
idea. 30-inch wingspan, 8-inch prop, 2212, and a 1400 kV 3S. The thing weighs like, I don't know, maybe 480 grams, 485 grams or something like that. So it's not your sub
Oh wow.
250,
It's yeah. Yeah.
but it'd definitely be a, you
Okay.
know, a really good FPV platform at some point. But yeah, so it was just something
Mm-hmm.
that I just whipped up out of my head, no plans, just looking at a couple sheets of foam board and no planes to fly. So it was just something
Mm-hmm.
that I just pulled off the top of my head and working with it, and I've flown it, put it about, I don't know, 10 packs through it so far, and man, it's so stable, it's so easy to fly, it's like point and shoot.
Fast.
It's really good. It's fast, it's slow, it goes. I got
Yeah.
the Radio Master OpenTX
Okay.
TX16S. Yeah, so using
Mm-hmm.
that, you can dial in curves and stuff like that. The thing just it's amazing. That's kind of surprises
Okay.
me actually,
Nice.
just off the top of the head.
Yeah. You've done something that the two of us haven't done, and I know this is kind of pushing on the edge of the month, but I remember when we started doing the Buildrory stuff, you had just like it was like maybe it was last month. You were finishing up a balsa build, right?
Yeah,
The
that
Harris
was a few
Pits.
months ago now. Yeah, yeah, the Harris
Oh,
Pits.
geez, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, it's been
Yeah,
a while.
we'll maybe we'll get into that later when we talk about the coverings, because
Sure.
that's an experience I think Joe and I both don't have. Is the using the coating material that typically gets used with balsa and how that all works.
Yeah, I'll
So I know
see.
the
Well,
two of us have got some questions.
it was my first roll at the hat for that covering. So as far as my experience goes with it, it's kind of limited, but you know, so my knowledge of it's not going to be not going to be, you know, too terrific on it. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of
No,
people that are going to, you know, comment on your channel and say, no, you're doing it wrong, and I probably
that's
am,
okay.
but yeah,
I know,
no,
right?
let's for sure
That's how
roll.
I feel about every time we get on the air here.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, no, let's do it up for sure.
Good.
Coverings.
Uh, you haven't been sticking. I was going to say, I know you built an FT3D, and I'm curious. We can talk about that maybe later about how that flew, because we'll stick a pin in that. You've also been doing some things that aren't flying, right? Because you were saying it was like -20, so you kind of have to figure out what else you're going to do when you're not doing that, right? What have you been up to with that?
So off and on, I've been kind of playing around. Well, just, you know, watching videos. You're bored, pandemic. You're stuck at home, whatever. It's cold outside. You're not flying. You're watching YouTube videos. I've been kind of, you know, getting inspired with these like land-based sort of stuff, right? So rock crawlers, scale vehicles, that kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing. And so yeah, I've been kind of dabbling my toes in the waters of the rock crawling world at this point. Not
Nice.
diving in, just dabbling the toes,
Okay.
kind of an idea.
Yeah, yeah.
And because it's not, you know, $5 with a foam board. There's a little bit more of an expense to it, right? And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and the replacement parts are a month and a half out and at least $20 a pop, right?
yeah. Well, you get on Banggood and it's not just you're on there for one item and then it's all of a sudden it's three items and you're saying add to cart, right? And all that kind of stuff, right? Just click. It's
Yeah,
okay.
exactly, right?
It's easier to ask for forgiveness than to beg for permission, kind of idea, right? So, or
Yeah,
is it the other
yeah,
way around?
exactly.
Ask for, yeah.
Wait, it's better to ask for forgiveness than to beg for permission. Yeah.
No, it's better to beg
It's
for
a
permission than ask for forgiveness. No, I don't know.
no.
I don't know how.
You want to do after the fact. Just do what you want and then
All
ask
right,
for forgiveness later.
I think it depends on how
figure it
much
out.
trouble you want to be in.
And who you're being in trouble with, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How much heat are you used to?
I know, right? I'll tell you what. One thing that I really enjoyed seeing you do over this past week or this past month was you dabbled in. I guess you must have had a couple extra motors hanging around or something because you decided to check out a hovercraft and like go full tilt on that.
Yeah, man, you're bringing up a lot of. I guess I have been kind of busy with stuff, eh? Yeah. So the
Yeah, I
hovercraft,
mean,
the hovercraft. Yeah, that was just inspired by again more YouTube video. I gotta stop watching YouTube. I guess it's getting me into trouble here. Yeah, I know. So I was watching guys build them like 3D printing them and stuff like that, and then I watched one guy do it just out of home built. He's like, this is all home built, like home built supplies, and he's like, find whatever you have, but I'm pretty sure you could, I've got like sheets of coroplast here. I had a little bit of insulation, a garbage bag. Who doesn't have a garbage bag? A little bit of foam board scraps. We do it with the
right,
planes,
and a
motors, that
couple
kind of thing.
motors.
Yeah, so it just added up where, hey man, why don't I just try it and see what happens, right? And it ended up working out. I got a video on that one too on the YouTube channel there, the North 49 RC, right? So yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was an interesting build. I kind of out of the videos, you kind of take the best of whatever you see and whatever worked out for everybody, kind of idea, and what didn't. So
Yeah,
you kind of have that reference to go from, right? And in doing that, I
yeah,
think
that
for my
helps.
first attempt, it did turn out pretty well. It
Well,
whipped
so
around
how
the
many videos of different builds did you watch before you decided on what you were going to do?
I don't know, maybe a handful, five, six
Okay.
kind of idea. I just searched it up, right? I mean, I watched a video or two of it.
Yeah.
Like there was one guy that went through like just like I don't know, a 10-minute build 3D printed video kind of idea, and then he had a part two.
Hmm.
So that's kind of cool. How would I do that without a 3D printer? So you search that up, right? Home built,
Yeah.
homemade sort of stuff, and then you start seeing some other videos, or just even search it up and you look through the list, right? And so I was like, oh man,
Hmm.
I got something that I could use for that. I got garbage bags, right? That kind of thing, and I'll just figure it
Yeah.
out, right? And I got a couple motors, and mine was smaller than the guy that the first guy that I saw with his home built sort of thing. Mine was about, I don't know, quarter the size of what he had going on. So
Okay.
it was a lot easier to build and a lot easier to rip around on. But yeah, no, it worked out really well.
So what did you think it was going to be? Like, how, I guess, how well did you think it was going to perform? And then like, after you used it, like, did you have to do a lot of tweaking? What do you think after you checked it out?
Uh, the first time I had I don't know, what do you fly a hovercraft? I don't know what is it, they hover, right? Do you
I don't
fly them?
float it,
Are you float it?
hover it.
Are you a pilot? Are you a captain? What are
Drive
you?
it?
Drive it? Do you drive it? I'm not too sure.
Yeah, you
I don't
drive it.
know.
Yeah.
It's let me see. It's kind of like an airboat. So yeah, you drive it.
You drive it. Okay. All right. Cool. So yeah, the first time like I powered it up on the floor, well, it was indoors, right? I mean, so I was whipping around. I think I even posted a video on that for a little bit. I ended up deleting it. It was just like really raw home built footage kind of idea.
Yeah, I think I saw it. You ran into like everything a couple times.
Yeah, exactly, right. But yeah, whipping it around, the living room or whatever. There was the base plate. The only thing I really tweaked on it from like the original build was the base plate. I didn't think it had like enough hover kind of idea. It had definitely the thrust and the control, but it didn't really have the
Okay.
hover, the lift. So I just opened up the
Mm-hmm.
holes on the base plate that's holding the bottom of the skirt down, kind of idea to the hovercraft.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So open those holes up, got more airflow going underneath it, man. She just whipped around all over the place. It was okay, time to take it outside, right? So that was really the only tweaking.
Nice.
Like it's a pretty simple concept. Once you understand it, you see guys trials and errors with it and stuff like that. And okay, that's the design I'm going with.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of went with that, and
Yeah.
it ended up working out. So
So how did it handle? Like, was it okay on rough terrain, or was it like, you know what I mean? Like, were you worried about the bags kind of ripping? Because I mean, it's just a garbage bag, right?
oh man, in my video you'll see I was kind of beating it up in the yard. It was mostly over the snow and the ice and stuff like that, but you'll see I was like whipping it all over
Mm-hmm.
the yard and taking it over some rough terrain just to see what it would do. I'd crashed it a couple times, flipped it over, that kind of thing, and
Yeah.
yeah, you look at the bag underneath. From when I first had, like, I probably had it outside probably about, again, a handful of times, 6, 7 times or something like that. Even had
Mm-hmm.
it. There was another guy that actually whipped it around the yard when I had it out earlier, kind of thing. I don't know, a few days before I filmed it. And it's kind of funny you mentioned that because I was trying to get like the heavy duty garbage bags. I looked at the bag after, that handful of times that it was outside, running over pine
Mm-hmm.
cones and ice and snow and all that kind of thing. Not a scratch,
Oh yeah, that.
scuff, anything. There was nothing. There was no punctures. There was nothing in the bag.
Wow.
Like
No.
I guess it just levitates so well. It doesn't even it barely even touches anything. It's just a garbage bag. You know what I mean? So I was kind of surprised. I'm definitely gonna do a version 2 for sure.
Nice. Well, good. I guess that brings us to Joe. You want to go, or you want me to go?
I can go ahead and go real quick because mine will be fairly quick, and then we can close out on you. So yeah, we talked like the weather has been bad down here, and Chris, I'm glad you've had I guess not good weather, but at least it's not been terribly wet. It sounds like you mostly got the snow and the ice. Um, we've had, I won't say a month solid, but just a lot of rain. Um, and I really wanted to take the opportunity over the last month to get out and fly a little more. And we may have had a day or two during the week that was clear, but the sun's still going down so early because we've not shifted the clocks forward, back, forward, spring forward. So we've not shifted the clocks yet. So when I'm getting off work, like it's already about nighttime. So I've not been able to fly during the week, say when it was clear, and then weekends it was just always rainy, nasty. So it never really uh, lended itself to a good opportunity to go out and fly. And I actually ended up taking one day off work. It was a Monday. I said, you know what? I'll take this day off work. It's sort of the first of the month. And, it's not supposed to rain that day. I'll have an opportunity to go out and fly. And it rained anyway. So that was the thing. I did get to fly once. I'll talk about that in a minute. We had the build party earlier in February. In fact, there was 3 of them because you did 2 Builduary parties.
Yep.
And then we had the actual build party. So I was able to start on and then later mostly finish the Master Series Corsair for
Nice plane.
for that. Yeah, it really Master Series just took me a lot longer than I thought it would, which seems to be the case for any plane that's not the Fogey. Um,
Yeah.
but the first night of the build party, say I got the top of the wing done, so I got the balsa spar and the foam mounted to it, got the top of the wing done, the curling and all that, and then for the second build party, I got the rest of the wing done and kind of started on the fuselage, and then some spare time, finished knocking out the fuselage and got it all glued up together. And then this last weekend at my father-in-law's house, my wife and I gone out of town to visit them. I got the wing, all the electronics mounted in there and the wing glued up to the fuselage and largely had it ready to fly, but I ran into a problem that I don't know if it's where I poked the control wires through I don't want to say the firewall, but through the fuselage formers, because at one point it's 4 formers thick as you're gluing 2 sections of the fuselage together, and so you have to kind of punch a hole through that with a barbecue skewer, and so I don't know if that's where it's binding or if it's actually binding further back in the coffee stir or the coffee stir that's guiding it through the side of the fuselage and through one of the rear formers. But that rudder is not steering or is not reacting properly. So I'll give it rudder control and it'll go, but it doesn't, like if the servo's trying to push the rudder, it doesn't push as far as it should, and it's real weak. And if it's pulling, then it'll pull it, but it doesn't return to center. If it pushes the rudder, then it doesn't return to the same center mark. And I pulled the bottom off, and of course the wing's already glued in, so it's hard to get to. But I look in there and I see the music wire that's serving as a control wire, the push rod, just really flexing in there anytime the servo is trying to push. So it's binding. and I tried to shoot some WD-40 down the coffee stir. My father-in-law had some WD-40 out in the shed. Unfortunately, he didn't have any graphite. He had mentioned graphite. I was like, man, that'd be awesome. But he didn't have any, so I was shooting WD-40 down in there to try to loosen that up or lubricate that so it wasn't binding so bad. And WD-40, even though that they got the little straw that it shoots out of, the way it foams and all, I mean, that's the same size straw as what you're basically guiding that wire through. So I couldn't really get it in there. And then you got the oily WD-40 just pouring down the side of your fuselage. So I don't know how much actually got in or didn't. And now I got this oil stain on the side of the fuselage. And so it's binding. I got to do some work on that. But I got pretty much everything else finished up with it and was going to maiden it. But also that weekend, I was helping him repair his simple Cub that he crashed, months. Oh shoot, it's been almost a year ago the last time we talked about that.
Oh wow.
He had accidentally zeroed the throttle, thinking he was pulling back on the aileron, got his controls flipped and killed the throttle and had no power, and it just fell out of the sky and went straight into the fence and boogered the nose up. So we were doing some repair work on that, and I was kind of showing him how, just some, I don't even want to say showing him like some techniques, just we were figuring out that we ended up doing something of a 3-sided box that was going to go over the nose section of the plane to reinforce externally those sections of fuselage that had been ripped out. And then we got the motor pod put back in, which on impact, the firewall had pushed back on the foam. So the motor was actually angled up a bit, which I knew was going to throw off the thrust angle. And I was like, okay, so long as we take that into account when we're flying, it'll be okay. And there was some excess slop in there that I thought I was okay with. And I guess I'm all out of order here. Rewinding, I started with the buddy boxing. I got a new transmitter, the Radio Master TX16. So I was trying to buddy box with his transmitter to mine transmitter to his receiver. Couldn't get his transmitter to buddy box with mine. It would bind, but wasn't doing anything. So I ended up I was going to have him fly on my transmitter. Got those working, got it communicating. So we went out to fly. I know that's kind of speeding through a lot of stuff there, but we went out to fly and launched it into the air in a mixture of the wind and then just a lot of slop that was in the plane as it was. I was fighting it like crazy, trying to keep it in the air. Anytime give it throttle, of course, I wanted nose up, which I expected because the motor was kind of tilted back, but constantly having a left rudder, right rudder, elevator up, elevator down, and I told him, I said, I could hand it to you. Go ahead, Chris.
Sorry, no, it's just a 3-channel plane. There's no ailerons?
Yes.
Okay.
It has ailerons that way back I talked about it. It has ailerons. I had originally set it up as a 4-channel, but
you took out the
controls. I made some mistakes in that part of the building process as well. That the ailerons were not flush with the plane, and it ended up being more a problem. And so in the repair process, we talked about it, and he just took the ailerons out of the mix. So the servos are still there holding the ailerons in place, but they're not hooked up to the transmitter, the receiver. We're flying it as a 3-channel.
Interesting.
But yeah, so just trying to go ahead,
my
Matt.
Cub. I was going to say, I was noticing that with the Cubs, they tend to be very, I'll call it nose up when you give the throttle. I mean, they really, the faster they go, they have a lot of lift to give. And that's pretty typical of it in general. Like a lot of people will even put just a little bit of elevator in it, like as well as coordinating the turns. So that way when you bank and come around, you give a little bit of rudder. Otherwise, it starts to tip stall. Like, that's just the nature of Cubs. So,
yeah.
But, yeah, you said that there was a lot of, I guess from the damage from the first crash, there's a lot more slop in the skewers and stuff, and the holes were a little bit bigger than they needed to be.
There was. And this is a story of thinking that I only had a little bit of time left to finish out what I had to do on the Corsair, and then I was going to be able to go out fly with him. But the truth of the story is, I spent a lot of the day trying to finish up my Corsair, and then we did some quick repair work on his plane to then go out and fly. So we got out there and got to flying, and I never did I never kicked in the trainer or the student transmitter, because it was flying so poorly that if I handed it to him, I knew it would immediately roll nose down, nose up, and flip at something. It was going to be in the ground. And I kind of talked to him as I was flying. I said, I want to hand it to you, but if I do, it's immediately going to crash. And I kind of brought it in for a couple rough landings, and we made some adjustments. And then when we were done, which actually ended in a crash, where I was trying to bring it in for a landing, and it just decided it was going to do its own thing and completely went out of control. We looked at it, and there's things that I'm looking at it now, thinking back to when I built it, or when we built it, that I'm thinking, why did I think this was okay to do? Like that V Victor bin that I like to put in those wires to kind of take up excess.
Because in the FT videos in the beginning, that's how they did their little slop take up, is they would make a V bend.
Yeah, well, mine are big enough because I end up leaving enough slop to do that kind of thing. Mine are big enough that that's actually a weak point in the push rod. So that V will compress really more than it should. So you end up losing pushing power, but then when there's force on that control surface and you're trying to pull it, to go the other way, it's going to stretch out that V, so you really don't get the strength of the control that you need for that. Plus, slop in the motor pod and the thrust angle being off. It just wound up being there was too much slop in it. And after that crash, and the sun was going down, I'd been fighting some wind. Like, he looked at me and said, "Well, do you want, we need to fly your plane?" And I said, "Honestly, I've lost the nerve. Like, I can't maiden the Corsair right now. I don't have it in me." So another time that I left my father-in-law's place feeling like, dagnabbit. But I've promised him that he's going to end up coming down, because they want to give some benches that have been around their place for a while. They want to give those to my wife so she can put them on the front porch in the back pad. So when they come down, I told him, I said, I promise I will have at least one plane ready to fly, buddy boxes figured out, we're going to fly, and you're going to be able to fly. And he's going to do some more repair work. We talked about things that he can do to pull a lot of the slop out. I left him those plastic washers that you 3D printed for me.
Okay.
I left him a small pile of those to kind of reinforce some areas.
Those should help a lot.
Those are washers for the barbecue skewers?
Yeah.
Oh,
You ever use those?
Actually, I use the little prop adapters, those little adapters that go for like different shafts. You get them with your props.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I use that. I embed those into the foam and then use that for my reinforcement. Works out really well.
That works too.
Right. And even some of the ones that aren't the right size, they still have a little bit of slop, but they're still really,
you get
pretty tight.
A lot of times you'll get like different size barbecue skewers. You go to $1 store, they have barbecue skewers, but they're like a different diameter. Some are thicker, some are thinner. They got,
Yeah, I've got that going
I
on
usually
right here.
only end up using like one or two sizes of prop adapters, and then I'll have all these other spares that happen to fit the skewers, right? So, yeah, they're free.
Yeah, that's a good use. That's a good use. Yeah, exactly, right? And they're already ready. They're ready to go. Just got to put them in.
So,
nice. Good idea.
Yeah, so it ended up just being a bad outing, but it was good. We got to spend some time together, but I couldn't get him flying, so I told him, I didn't take the Fogey, even though I had the Fogey with me. I said, well, we'll have his Cub, we'll have my Corsair, that's enough to fly. So I'll probably take him with the Fogey. which I did finally cut the top off of and mount the simple soarer wing to.
Nice.
I just haven't flown it yet. It's been a weird several weeks, but this break was nicely timed because there's some stuff going on. I won't get too deep into it because folks don't want to hear about this one, but there's some stuff going on with work that's taking up a lot of time in the evenings, and it's just it was well timed this break.
That way you could focus on it and not feel like you got other things to do.
Yeah, we kind of said we're going to take this break, and then it's just like the universe decided, okay, now's the time, and so that's how that went.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking forward to eventually maidening that Corsair and actually getting my father-in-law in the air right.
Good.
Matthew, what have you been flying?
I've been flying at least 4 planes because that was the challenge for Build Your Way. I've been building, 4 planes in 1 month, 4 weeks, 4 planes. And of course, right before Build Your Way, I was using the Edward RC time saver thing, and I ended up cutting out a FT Duster. Right. So before that even started, I had like halfway built an FT Duster and I had to finish it. So I've got that finished, but I didn't maiden it because there's only been so many days. I'm like, I need to get these Build Your Way planes up in the air. I got to test them. So, I did that. So my Build Your Way started out, I had a lot of great ideas and most of them didn't pan out. But I was talking to Chris here. And we were just chatting about a bunch of different things, like we usually do when we get on the forum here.
It's usually dumb
podcast. Stuff. Yeah, it's always dumb stuff. It's fantastic. We start throwing a bunch of weird ideas, like, "Hey, check out this crazy plane," or "Wouldn't it be cool to do this?" And eventually, Matt, you need to use this paper stuff, this paper modeling thing, and make a flying car. I'm like, yeah, whatever. And they're like, yeah, you'll never do it. And I'm like, oh yeah, well, okay. So I decided to take on building a flying car, and specifically making the Taylor Aero car. I'd seen Fiddler's Green version of it, and I was like, that thing looks awesome. And I'm like, well, if the paper model comes together okay, the foam board should come together. I mean, it'll probably require some trimming and things like that, but you know what? That's probably a good way to get an idea. So I put it into CAD. I drew it out, and I sized it so that it would run on a 5-inch prop, because I had a FT F-Pack. And so I sized it up and I did it, and I set up the wing to be, I think, 1 sheet. I could make the entire wing. It's full width. I'm trying to remember how I set that up. But anyway, point is it's a total of 48 inches wide. And it's basically 1 sheet is dedicated to wings, and the other one is dedicated to the tail. The cone section is the tail. And then the front is the third sheet is dedicated to basically the car and the little, what are those? The struts, I guess, and the little wheel hubs and the wheels and all that little stuff.
Can I just interject for a second? Because I saw as you were going through that building process, and I find it impressive your ability to visualize the shapes that you need, and then to cut that foam and shape it and round it and curve it and it all fit up. Like, okay, if I were to sit down with foam and try to do that,
this is where Fiddler's Green did a lot of that initial work. Okay, so they had a general plan. Now I probably would have done it like the 2 sides and had them kind of maybe bend in a little bit on the top and bottom, which I think is ultimately what I'm going to do in the final version of this, because kind of molding them together didn't come together as cleanly as I'd hoped. And then it turns out all the cool molding work was in the canopy or whatever, the coupe part in the back, as it all kind of comes together like the back of a flea. Right. And you end up actually cutting most of that off to put the wing on. So I was like, oh, shoot. All right, well. And so like,
it did look really good, though. I really liked how it looked.
Yeah. It came together perfectly. I was like, oh, this is beautiful. And then I realized what I'd have to cut off. I'm like, well, I don't know what the point of that was. Now I could could do it two ways, right? I could rebuild it and have basically a box inside the car, and the wings slip over, like over the outside of the car, and there's a spar that slips into that box, and then we kind of link it in, and then it works solid because it has struts and stuff. That I didn't put in. I didn't need to put in on this model because it doesn't need it, but the final version should have it, right? Anyway, the cool part about the process was, one, using the paper models as the basis was pretty neat. And then putting it together and realizing when you put a motor at the very tail end of a boom, you really need to make sure that the thrust angle is dead right. Because I think the initial first go was slightly off. Like, it wasn't like in line with the front of the vehicle. It was slightly, I think the firewall was, I think normally when you put an F-Pack in, it's set at like 2 or 3 degrees, right?
Right.
So when I put that on the back of the plane, it's 2 to 3 degrees off, and it's not in line. So I had to actually shift it over. And anyway, there's a couple things I'm really impressed with. One, it's got a huge wing area. So it has a ton of lift, because I was worried. I realized by putting the motor way at the back, I had to put a lot of weight in the front. And then I'm sitting there thinking, this is a lot of weight for the car. I don't think I was going to be able to get it off the ground, especially pushing with like a 5-inch prop on a 2205, 2300 kV motor, like a standard quadcopter motor. I'm like, oh, I'm never going to get enough thrust to get this thing in the air. But it turns out, after kind of straightening a couple things out, making sure that the wheels were all going right and the thrust angle was correct, I got enough speed and off it went. I thought the first flight, it was going like basically heading towards the fence, that nefarious fence at the end of the parking lot. I managed to, like, come on, baby, pulled it up. And what I realized was that I needed full up elevator for pretty much regular flight. I think I had like a little bit of room to be able to pull a little extra up, and then the rest was all nose down, So when I came back down, I adjusted the things, and I went and sent it back up in the air, and I got it to fly pretty well. I don't think I got it to the point where I could do hands off, which is what I ultimately want. But I got it so I could really fly it around and have a good time with it and land it, and have it was awesome. It was just neat to take it from beginning concept from what we had talked about, Chris. And if you want to see what this thing looks like, go to, was it Planes? I think in the Planes movie, they have one of these aero cars.
Yeah, no,
well.
I was actually,
like,
I'd seen some pictures. If you Googled some pictures and I searched it up, yeah, no, it's, I think I sent you with the original picture of like, hey, this is what you need to build, didn't I? Yeah.
Yeah, you did. And I'm like, oh, look at that. And I know I'd seen it. I'm like, I've seen it somewhere. And I saw, we ended up watching Planes or something with the kids. And I was like, hey, man, that's that car that we were talking about. And then I kind of got my thought process rolling back around to it. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. So anyway, turned out it worked and it looks great. There's a couple things I'm going to need to tweak and do a version 2 of, which when I get that done, I will release some plans for it, because this was a lot of fun. And I think I can see other people kind of enjoying it too. So,
and that was one of your Bilgeberry planes, wasn't it?
It was a Bilgeberry plane. So I had only a month to basically come up with the idea, develop plans, cut it out, build it, tweak it, adjust it, and fly it. I think I allowed myself an extra week, but I didn't need it. I think I did it in 3 weeks. Yeah, so there's a lot to go. And then I also made it historically accurate. As part of the build, I pulled out some of the history, and it turns out there's only 6 of those things made. And one of them was basically the Operation Air Watch for a radio station. So it was the traffic car. So the traffic plane that would like report on all the traffic that's going around the city was one of these flying cars. So it has all this livery of the KISN, Operation Air Watch. It's got all over the thing. It's red and white, and it's a lot of fun. So, and then of course I printed out those car eyes, and I put them on the windshield because
you got it.
Kind of have to.
Yeah,
you got it. I mean, why wouldn't you?
Exactly.
And then the next, I'll call it. I dialed in one of the builds. As part of February with the Scouts, I do a STEM night, and as part of that, I cut out like 13 or 20 planes, and I do a 1-sheet chuck glider like a tiny trainer. And so I, cut out a bunch, and I had a couple extra. So as part of that build, I built one of those planes. And then I just filmed flying it, chucking that across the gym and stuff. So that was kind of one of my builds. And admittedly, kind of a cop out. I was hoping not to have to use that one, but time was starting to run short. And I'm like, all right, well, technically, I've built a chuck glider. And then as number 2, I pulled out a single sheet build that I had designed a while back that was based on the Trek Weasel, which is a slope glider plane. That basically, maybe, I think the original was somewhere around 50 or 60 inches. And it's this kind of delta wing looking deal, almost like a planker, where all it has is a vertical stabilizer and elevators.
Elevon.
Elevons. And then it's it. You just put a little bit of weight in the nose and chuck it and watch it float around. And of course, all the promotional videos for it are these people standing on the precipice of a mountain cliff and just kind of launch it out and just have it fly around like it's nothing,
So is it more of a soarer then? Is it supposed to be catching updraft?
It's supposed to be, it's supposed to be a slope soarer, but I don't have any slopes near me, that I can like kind of throw it off of a cliff and hope it works. Except, I guess I can travel 5 hours out to Kitty Hawk.
Stand on the roof of your house. I can
fly it out near the beach. No, dude, there's so much turbulence at the roof line of my house, and ask me how I know. I can't tell you how many planes I've tried to maiden up in my house, and it's like, this is terrible.
Yeah, I have a feeling you're no stranger to that.
No, not at all. Anyway, so I built that, and that was a really simple, easy build. It involved one of the techniques we're going to probably talk a little bit about, which is ironing. So I ironed the trailing edge so that it came down to a point so that it could be as aerodynamic as possible. I used the removing the paper on the inside of the top of the wing so that it was nice and curved. And, the fuse is more like a boxy football is kind of, we'll call it the fuse, as it were. Like a teardrop shape, but more kind of squared out corners. So I built those 2. And then for the last one, I had a 50 millimeter. I'd ordered a 50 millimeter EDF to build the Griff Flyers L39. But then he dropped like the F22 that is just downright beautiful. And then, of course, you watch him fly it, and it's like, oh my gosh, everybody at the field flies like the professional. I think it's like, I don't know if it's E-Flight or one of those guys just recently dropped a kit like last year, and everybody who's bought one is doing crazy like high alpha maneuvers and then shooting for the sky and doing barrel rolls and loops and flips and all this stuff. And then they come in and they bring it down and almost sit it on the tail and watch it like kind of land, like it's a quiet belly flop. You know what I mean? They're like, what the heck? And they're like, dude, I love the way this thing flies. So everybody loves it, right? And Griff's flying it like he's flying it the same way. He's like, yeah, it pretty much flies the same way. It's awesome. You really can't go wrong with this plane. I'm like, all right, okay, you convinced me. I'm going to
challenge accepted.
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
I got to build one too, man. It's definitely on the list. I got to get me an EDF. That would be like my first EDF I would do too.
Nice. Get the one that he recommends, because I've got a couple different ones, and so far they're really pretty good. But the one he uses, it seems to have a little extra kick. Like it's got a little extra thrust, and I think in some of the builds, like the L39. I think I used a 50 millimeter. Hey, some of it didn't have a little bit as much thrust. And like the one he has more. And I think if I'd put this EDF in the L39 that I built of his, it probably would have flown really well. It just, mine was just a hair lethargic when I released it. It just would never quite get off the ground, But with this F22, dude, so it's really complex. Like there's a lot of individual parts. It's done kind of like, with a series of formers that kind of all line up, and they kind of sandwich in between two of the wing halves, and then you skin the top and you skin the bottom, and they are like, it's crazy. And of course, I'm using a projector system with a foot, like it's fuzzy on the wall, and I'm using a pencil freehand, and I'm trying to get these lines all straight. So I'm like, come on, baby, I hope it works. I build it. The thing has a slight twist from front to back. So there's like maybe a 4-degree twist from the back plane to the nose plane. There's a slight torque to the body, right? And I'm sitting there going, I hope that doesn't ruin it. I'll tell you what, I let it go, and I don't know why I never think EDS. I got a bust the throttle out all the way to full and huck it. Like, because they take a while to kind of get enough air moving and get some thrust going. And so I put it up to the normal 75 or 80% throttle and gave it a decent throw, and the plane just goes and it starts to glide down to the ground. I'm like, oh no, take it up to full. And it hits the ground effect, kind of hovers there for a minute or two, like as it slides along the ground. And then it finally gets enough speed and starts taking off. I was like, oh, this is awesome. And of course it's making this nice whoosh noise as it zooms past. I'm like, oh, look at that, But what I failed to realize, I don't know why, because all it is two control surfaces. So it's Elevon set up at the rear of the plane. There's no rudders. So as I'm doing a steep turn, it's coming around the corner, right? It's sinking to the ground. And so on like the second come back around, maybe the third one, I start losing altitude and I can't like turn it back on its belly and gain more altitude fast enough. And I was like, oh, shoot. So it disconnected a couple of wires, no real damage. So I'll bring it out again when it stops raining. But it flew great. And it was a lot of fun to hear the whooshing noise that a good jet makes. And that is no exception. So, those were, I didn't get a chance to fly the Duster, which was done, but I did cut out a bunch of planes, some for the kids. I cut out the Bravo and the Charlie and the Sparrow before the needle broke, and I need to go make another needle and put it back in. I think I need to print out a couple parts in different materials, maybe ABS or something that's a little bit more temperature resistant, because the PLA kind of just starts to melt with, after a good amount of movement. So it starts to I need a different material in there for the spinners. But
Okay.
it otherwise prints out pretty good. But that was it. I mean, that was a busy month and a busy time off for sure. There was certainly no break for me, but at the same point, it was a lot of fun.
I imagine that time saver needle cutter thing that you got going on was really helpful doing the STEM program with the Scouts, eh?
No, man. No, I don't. I don't use that. I actually, what's even better is you take a scroll saw and sandwich 8 boards together, and you cut it out that way.
Oh, okay.
And what you're
I
doing
see.
is cutting 8 patterns at once, and in 1 hour. So it takes about like an hour per sheet that you're cutting. So in about 2 hours I had all 16 or 17 or whatever it is I had to make.
Right. Okay, now I remember.
So,
Yeah, you did. You showed a picture you posted. There was just buckets of parts. Yeah, a bucket of fuselages, a bucket of wings. I do remember that now. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, just call me Mr. KFC, right? No, it's good. Yeah, and that's what I realized. I thought about it. I'm like, well, if it was a really complex build like Gripfire's F-22, I'd probably use the ERC time saver, something like that, where there's a lot of little intricate cuts. But on the tiny trainer is really pretty basic. There's only a handful of parts. They're pretty straightforward. They're pretty easy to cut. Using a scroll saw makes it go quick. So that's what I found works the best for that situation. So if you're ever building you need to build like 20 or 30 of them. That's probably the best way to handle it. Sandwich about 8 or 9 of them and run them through either bandsaw or your scroll saw or something like that.
Now, how clean of an edge do you get going through that bandsaw?
About as clean as you get with the ER time saver. It's pretty clean. You could probably take a small sanding block and smooth it out a little bit better. And I've done that when it gets really kind of hairy. I'll run it across my sander for about like 3 seconds, just like a quick shoot, and it's ready. And it's a lot smoother. And it's only foam, so a 60 grit sandpaper will eat through that stuff like it's
Well.
like it's standing still. So anyway, so thanks. That's what I did. I used the bandsaw or the scroll saw. Worked out great. I guess that ends our fly stories. So that brings us. Let's talk about the build nights. That's one of the things we did when we weren't recording podcasts, but we did continue to have build nights. As it was Builderory, I hosted 2 different weekends that I hosted build night for the people who were part of that group and anybody else who really wanted to join. So we had a handful of people come out for that, and I want to thank you guys all who came out. It was a lot of great conversation, and it was really neat to see everybody's builds firsthand, and comments and questions that people had as we were doing it. I know, Chris, you've been part of some of the other past build nights, and it's always a welcome to have you join us.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun.
And then we also had, for the podcast, we had our February build night, right? And there were relatively smaller build groups, but it was actually really nice to have that. And that's one of the things I know sometimes when you get with just a couple people, you really just have a good time chatting about all sorts of stuff in the hobby. I know it's neat to have a bunch of people on, but when you get a couple people, you can really kind of get in deep.
Yeah, both size categories, as it were, have their advantages. And I was able to make the actual build night, and then I came to one of your Builduary build sessions, and both were enjoyable. In fact, that's where the majority of the Corsair building got done. So,
yeah, and that the one at the end of the month was a lot smaller. And I think, it's funny because Builduary starts out with everybody really energetic and excited, and they've all got their builds planned out, and they're ready to cut. And by the end of the month, everybody's like either exhausted or they're done, or they're like, I don't even want to, I'm out. I can't finish this up,
Right.
Or they're like me and building frantically. Like, oh my gosh, I only have one more day, a couple more days to do this. I better finish this up, So I want to thank everybody for coming out and joining me. That was a lot of fun to sit down almost every weekend and just have one night that I can look forward to getting together with everybody. So it's nice. So that brings us to our guest, Chris McCallum. He's also known as Battleaxe on the FT forums. If you've seen him there, if you've seen his posts, he was very active. About a year ago when you got into this, you were like Mr. Gung Ho, right?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to learn as much as possible out of it. It was I don't really fly with many people at all, so I'm just starting out. I was kind of teaching myself and crashing a lot, so I needed some advice, right? So I got onto the forums pretty early. It was really helpful. I'm a bash and crash kind of guy anyway, so kind of learning by experience and learning by other people's mistakes, so I can go out there, make them myself, and then now I know what he's talking about, kind of idea, right? So.
Oh my god, that's done right. Yeah.
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
So how about this? Give our listeners a 10-second intro to who Chris McCallum is.
Man, I'm 45 years old. I kind of wanted to get into the hobby. I've always been into aviation at from a young age kind of thing. My grandfather used to fly with him. I got over 2,000 hours of actual like full scale flight time kind of idea. So that's kind of what.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. That's kind of where it's all coming from. So yeah, the RC aviation thing was kind of a natural fit.
Oh, nice, good. Well, let's get into some of those, some more detail about that kind of stuff. So, how long have you been in the hobby?
As of now, I would say about a year and 8 months. So yeah, what's that? 20 months so far, kind of idea.
Yeah.
No, actually, 22 months.
22
I'm
months. Almost 2 years.
I'm kind of aging it like it's a baby or something like that. It's 22 months old.
Look, if you start telling me how many weeks you've been into it, I'm out.
Yeah. How many minutes? That kind of stuff. Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah. Nice. So a little over almost 2 years, and that's awesome. I know it's like the 2 year mark is when it seems like a lot of people, especially like going by the forums, a lot of people kind of get their feet in the ground and really start having solid success, which is awesome. And I know really... looking at what you've done, you accomplished that a year ago, and now you're just screwing around with us.
Yeah, I guess so, eh?
What got you started, right? You talked a little bit about was it your uncle?
Grandfather, actually. My grandfather, he flew C-130s in the military, in the Canadian military here. So he was always a pilot. Getting out of that after his retirement from the military, he started doing charter flighting, that kind of stuff. Flying around, actually, NHL hockey teams, the Edmonton Oilers. He chartered them all over Western Canada, that kind of thing. So.
Nice. Did you get to meet a bunch of them?
And well, that's the thing. And I would go out there summertime between like grades in school, mostly elementary school kind of thing. I would go out and visit them. They lived actually out in Charlie Lake. It's in northern British Columbia, obviously in Canada kind of idea. They also had a yacht down in Vancouver. So I would stay there with him as well. And then to get there, he would pick me up in an airplane, and I would sit in the cockpit. As a kid, you're a 6-year-old child, right? That
Yeah.
sets a pretty big impression. I've done that with him. Like I'd spend 2 months out of the summer out of my grandparents' place, and just 3-4 times a week I go to work with him, and we just fly all over Western Canada. Do a
Oh
round
wow.
trip in a day, right? So it just leaves such a huge impression on you, right? And plus where he's coming from, like I said, flying the C-130s in the military, that kind of thing. He was in World
Mm-hmm.
War II. So yeah, no,
Right.
there's a lot of respect there for my grandfather and what he does and what he did, and so it like I said, it just left a big impression. That's kind of where it started.
That's really cool.
So, is is the C-130 say your favorite plane, or do you have a different one you'd call your favorite full size?
Ah, man, the favorite full size, really, when it comes down to it, the C-130. Okay, yeah, I mean it's an iconic plane on its own, but really, the plane that has really done it for me would be, and it's very Canadian. This is going to be very red and white, man. It's the uh, the De Havilland Beaver, the bush plane. I actually got some flight time in the full size Beaver, De Havilland Beavers, on floats, going on like fishing trips, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, you fly in one of those, man. It's game over, right? It's like you're hooked. That's it, right? So.
It, is that because I'll call it lake runways tend to be more abundant than regular runways?
Yeah, that's actually why I kind of what I was talking about on the whole fishing trip thing. I actually, me and a buddy spent 3 days out at his dad's cabin, and it was like the cabin itself, like to get to it, it was pretty remote to begin with. But his neighbor directly next to him, I think just to the south side of him on the lake shore, he had a de Havilland Beaver, and we're just fishing off the dock on his dad's property, fishing off the dock, and I'm staring at this de Havilland, right, and it's all tied down undercover and all that kind of stuff, and wow, man, this is you're casting, you're looking at the plane, and just maybe you'll catch a fish kind of thing. You don't really care. I'm staring at the plane, right? But the last day of the 3 days, the last day, the neighbor comes out and he starts uncovering the plane, and we're out there fishing on the dock, and he's like, "Hey, you guys are fishing. I'm going fishing. You guys want to come?" And yeah, of course, right? I mean, you're not gonna refuse an opportunity like that. Float plane,
Right.
where are we going, right? So
I know,
where are we
right?
going?
Yeah,
And
Uncle.
he's like, well, we're going up to Rock Lake. It's you can't access it by road or anything. You can only fly in, and it's half covered by ice right now, but there is half the lake that's open to land. So that's where we're going
Mm.
fishing. And it was just amazing, man. Like unbelievable. Like a
Wow.
45-minute flight to get to this lake that's in the middle of no. You look like you're 5,000 feet up in elevation, right? Kind of idea.
Right.
And you're looking across this vast expanse of just Alberta bush, and you see this pearl of a lake just sitting in the middle of it, right? Just shining at you, and he just brings it right down, right alongside the ice. Sat there and fished, man. It
Oh
was, it
wow.
was, it's epic, right? So I mean, that's got to be my favorite full size right there.
You're
Oh wow.
you're
Yeah,
making me
nice.
really jealous right now, Chris.
Yeah, same here. That's awesome. I'm really that's so cool. That must have been an incredible experience. Did you take a lot of pictures of the plane
Man, you
just
don't
the
even
trip?
think of that when you're there. I'm talking like back in like maybe the early 90s, like 90,
Oh yeah.
91 kind of. There's
Yeah.
no such thing as cell phone. You're still on tablet and you scribe and that kind of thing, right? So
Yeah, hammering out with a chisel.
you chiseling it out, right? So yeah, so it is what it is. Welcome to the hobby.
Nice.
So, I I guess I never asked you about it, but do you have a pilot's license? Have you considered getting a pilot's license so you can go fly like that when you want to?
Uh, you know what? That was like the first thing that I was looking to do right coming out of high school. Not even like even having to come out of high school, but like looking to get into it even like earlier than that, doing like air cadets, doing some time in
Right.
there, that kind of thing. I did apply right out of high school. I applied for all three branches actually of the Canadian military. Timing though in the early 90s, I think yeah, I graduated in 93. There was
Mm-hmm.
just no money going into the Canadian military. They were shutting bases down all over the place. You pretty much there was a
Uh-huh.
waiting list. They said they'd keep me on it for 6 months, but I was competing against like scholars, people that have university degrees, kind of idea, right? Like doctors
Yeah.
and
Right.
that kind of stuff, right?
Stiff
So
competition.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of competition there. I mean, obviously the budget has opened up for the military, and you can go into it now, but I'm 45, and I'm not going to play that game right now at this point. But that was I was taking the whole pilots thing actually pretty seriously back then, and then again, I wear glasses, I wear contact lenses, that kind of stuff. So my eyesight was a problem at that point in time, and you don't have laser surgery at
Sure.
that offered to you at that given point in
No.
time. So even to get your private pilot's license, it was kind of a struggle at that point. So it was
No.
I just kind of gave up on it. So RC flying was the next best thing.
I know, right?
Well, bringing it back home then, do you have a favorite? Well, I imagine you do, but what's your favorite RC plane?
Plane that I've flown, plane that I want to fly. Favorite RC plane that I've
Start with
flown?
Yeah, start with plane you flown, and then future plane you want to fly.
Well, I think out of like to pick a genre, it would be warbirds are my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
As far as how they look for a warbird would be the P-47, but again, the best plane to fly that I've flown so far as warbirds would be the Spitfire. So
Okay.
and that's where I go with that. Yeah.
And the future plane you wanna fly it?
I want to do more twins. I want to do like I got a lot of experience with duck and stuff like that, but let's try to mix that warbird thing in there. Maybe do the P-38 kind of idea, the P-61 Black Widow, those kind of planes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do some
those are
warbirds.
some of my favorites too.
Yeah, and the nice part about those is that they're not aerobatic planes. They're not as aerobatic as say the duck could be, so I might be a little nicer to them considering they have landing gear and all that kind of stuff. Have a little bit more respect for them. I don't know. I busted up the Mustang within about 8 flights, so anything could happen.
That's more flights than I tend to get.
Yeah.
So what do you like about the twins then? What makes you lean towards them before a regular one?
You know what? The twins
Single
are so
engine.
stable. There's no torque roll. They're actually really relaxing to fly if you want to just cruise around kind of thing. And they have enough power. Vert, that kind of stuff is nothing. Like I said, aerobatics are nothing. It's just a lot easier to play around with. You don't have to. They feel a lot more stable. I mean, you've actually recently flown a twin, the Tiger Cat, that kind of thing, right? So
yeah, that's a lot of fun. It's
you
just I just love flying anything really. No, but it is. You don't have to worry about torque roll. It's just simpler in general. Although I did have like one of the engines on the Tiger Cat start to gum up, and that led to big problems. That makes it harder to fly.
Yeah, no, I can imagine.
Yeah, generally, when things are going good, it's pretty good. Well, so what's your favorite part of the hobby, though? Obviously, you are a fan.
Yeah,
there's
I'm
a
hooked,
lot
man.
of different pieces and parts to it.
Yeah, it's a good thing we have discussion groups over it. Hi, my name's Chris McCallum, and I'm an aviationaholic kind of thing. Or is that how it works? Yeah, no. I just like really just the whole learning pattern of it. Like, there's always something to learn, and there's always different genres to explore to it, right? So even though call it almost 2 years into the hobby, I haven't done FPV yet. I haven't done gliders, that kind of thing. More stuff with like multi-engine. Again, I haven't done like a twin warbird, so that's going to be like next on the list, right? So there's all that kind of stuff. I also want to get better footage for my videos, so I want to kind of do like the drone side of stuff and get that cinematic, sort of drone feel to it. Do chase if I could, chase planes, that kind of thing, and look at that side of the hobby as well, right? Really open up those doors as well, right? So yeah, again, there's always something to learn, something to try. I'm always experimenting. I've crashed over 100 planes just experimenting with stuff. Built some 8 times doing it, right? So it's that's what keeps me building, I guess. Maybe I should get a needle cutter.
Well, Joe, he doesn't keep all of his planes after the crashes like I do, because I can fix them. And so he doesn't need a rack of like 50 or some odd planes or whatever. He's just got a couple of the ready to go, right?
When I crash them good. I just kind of look at them as like unfixable.
Oh, nice. Maybe I should start doing that. Maybe I'll actually whittle down my board.
If you're gonna do it right, it's just foam board, right?
Yeah,
that's right, man. Commit to the crash.
All right. I'll take that under consideration.
It pulls in the subscriber for sure, man. You don't go to NASCAR, watch a bunch of cars doing left turns for no reason, do you? You want to see the crashes.
Oh, okay. That's true. I don't go to hockey game because I want to see them skate well. I want to see them fight.
Well, there's some
score.
scoring and stuff in there, but of course, yeah, there's the whole posturing thing. Hockey's big in Canada, right? So
Yeah, that's what I heard. I grew up in Connecticut, so it's very much the land of the ice skate.
nice.
So, not quite as much as Canada, but it's still there. All right, so let's get into. So how, I know you like to build and you like to fly. How would you rate your piloting skill? If like 1 is a noob and 10 is like the Top Gun winner.
My piloting skills
for scale fun.
Oh, man, it depends on the day. It depends on
How'd
the
you rate
plane.
yourself?
I'd say I'm man. I'd be a strong 4 pushing 5. Maybe no. Maybe a 5. No. I don't know. Somewhere around there. It depends on what your range of
Okay.
what your scope is of like where the light at the end of the tunnel is. I guess you know what I mean. So.
Well, I don't know. 1 is noob and 10 is like you're spotlighting a show. Like you're the
I'm
10-minute
Jace
show off section.
or Jace Dasuya. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry if I screwed that name up. I apologize, but yeah, no. I'm definitely no Top Gun. I guarantee you that. There's a lot to learn yet. A lot of it comes down to confidence. So pushing my confidence level, that kind of thing. But a strong 4. I'd say a strong 4.
Okay, good. What
It'll
about
make me
build skills?
reevaluate where I lie on that scale.
Yeah. I know if you're a 4, then that puts me somewhere else than I thought originally. All right, so what would you say your build skill is?
Definitely higher than that. Higher than that. Well, working with foam board, I mean, wow, there's so many different mediums that you could build planes from. Like I'd like to try hot wire cutting, that kind of stuff at some point in time, right? So there's always that aspect to it as well. And man, building skills, I'll take it on. So I'd say yeah, about a 5, 6 maybe, whatever. They would they all kind of one leads to the other. Like I've done balsa build as well, right? So it was kind of because you already have experience with the foam board, you kind of it's kind of a natural progression.
Speaking about balsa builds, what you tried out balsa, and how would you say the two compare? What was the thing you liked about balsa, and what was the thing you didn't? Because for us, we primarily talk about foams because that's our experience so far. And both of us are kind of we looked at this coming year. We both kind of identified that balsa is coming.
Yes.
And so we'd love to hear what your noob experience was with balsa.
You know what? Coming from like I said, building so many planes out of foam board, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to learn it and do it the first time, just for the fact that it really opened up a lot of like horizons and possibilities with both mediums, kind of idea. It's it's a lot. I'm going to see myself doing a lot more balsa builds. Is pretty much where it comes down to. I really like the scale detail of it as opposed to the foam board. Like you can do a lot of nice scale detail with foam board, especially if you're doing like airbrushing, that kind of thing. But just how manageable balsa is, and if you just like foam board, if you break something in the build process, man, you could probably go down to your hobby store and replace the piece that you broke for a few bucks on a stick that it's probably gonna last you a long time, right? So it's
yeah.
There's definitely a lot of pros to balsa for sure.
Right. What process do you like more right now? I mean, so foam board is like cut it out, fold it over, you're ready to fly. Balsa is put it together and zap glue it. Hopefully you don't glue your hands, skin it, and off you go, right? That's my summary, but I'm probably way off because my experience.
As far as building with balsa goes, man, it's actually because it does get repetitive. Build a wing out of balsa, like doing all the ribs and all that kind of like it does get repetitive. So you might glue your hands to the first couple ribs, but you figure it out by the third or fourth, right? So I mean, you get your system down, you get it figured out. Like my first balsa build was a biplane. I had 2 wings to build, so it was okay, this is what I did. This is what I screwed up in the first wing. This is what I'm not going to do on the second wing, and this is how this is going to go, right? So by the time you're in the second one, you pretty much got it planned out, right? So yeah,
nice, good. All right. When you started, what did you think the hobby was going to be like?
I definitely when I was younger, I kind of looked into getting into the hobby before, and it was kind of back in the day when the hobby was really more unaccessible, I might say, and
Mm-hmm.
it was more clicky kind of thing. So just the hobbies, the people that were
Okay.
already in the hobby and already spent the money in the hobby, like you're looking at the hobby, you're looking at a
Right.
guy that's been in it for a while. You're looking at he's probably got a plane that he's put, a couple grand into, say. So it's a decent size, maybe
Yeah.
fifth
Right.
scale Cub. Let's just call it a Cub with, a glow engine on it, and he's got this like amazing looking, space age controller that's, and he's flying it around, man. I've been doing this for 20 years, and you're looking at the hobby, and it gets pretty intimidating, right? So that's kind of what I
Mm-hmm.
thought I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
getting into, but I knew it was cheaper. It was easier. I found the flight test like model kind of idea, right? So
Yeah.
the foam board just made it so much easier and more accessible to get into, budget wise, and
Yeah.
so I knew I had that advantage. I still found that it depends on where you went and who you talked to. This is before forum, being on forums or anything like that. But even going into a hobby store, there was still kind of that sort of clicky attitude and stuff like that you would get every once in a while. But you're a noob, and they probably see 100 people just like me every day, right? So you get
Right.
yourself
Right.
past that and you start making friends with these guys a little bit, then you start getting the quality info, and then they start putting you on, hey man, check out this website, or that kind of thing, or this is what you give you a little advice, little tips and tricks here and there. You start looking into things, doing the research, and you start finding out these guys are right and they're doing you a favor, right? Doing you a solid. So then, getting into it, I started,
Mm-hmm.
it started really taking off for me at that point in time too. I started getting excited about it and started building my own stuff. And
How far into that start was it before you started real kind of getting involved in the community and having it being a positive experience? Sounds like it started off being kind of a maybe an exclusive experience where you're on the out, and then all of a sudden it comes to a point where they're like, okay, you're in it, kid. All right, come on, let me show you some things.
yeah,
How far in do you think that
oh man,
was?
it was probably a couple months struggle. It was like because I was in the hobby shop back in like the April of 2019 to actually just go pick up some like model rockets to do something with the kids for bonding
Mm-hmm.
time, that kind of stuff, right? And so we picked up some model rockets, a
Yeah.
couple toys here and there, and I'm looking at the armload of toys that the kids have. I can't walk out with nothing, right? Like, I mean, I'm looking at the shelves.
That's not
Yeah.
fair.
So I started looking at the little microplanes, like the Sport Cub S from Hobby Zone. Is it Hobby Zone? Yeah, it's Hobby Zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I started looking
Yeah.
and I started asking questions about it, and they're like, "Yeah, okay, this guy's a noob. $100 for the plane. Here, you need to spend another $100 for the transmitter, the DXE. Here's a few extra batteries." I ended up
Mm-hmm.
spending, yeah, again, like another $250 on top of getting the model rockets and everything like that. And we're all walking out with our presents, right? So it was a good day. It was a
Yeah.
quality
Yeah.
experience, and plus firing off the model rockets. So the Sport Cub S, it's got the AS3X, pretty much flies itself, and I got into it pretty easily.
It
Watched a
does.
couple videos on YouTube. You start doing some research. You figure out how to trim your plane after about half a dozen crashes, that kind of stuff. You start learning how to fix it really
Yeah.
quickly. That kind of so you get involved, right? And it's a progression there. So after you start going through the trials and tribulations of actually doing it, not just talking about it, I think that's when, like 2 months in, I think that's when I started getting some street cred with the hobby stores, I think. And then also, it was around the same point in time I started getting involved with the FT forums because I needed help. I was crashing stuff all over the place, right? But between that
Yeah.
Sport Cub S and the time I was got onto the forums, I probably built, I don't know, half a dozen planes that I'd seen and downloaded plans from the FT website, their channel, kind of idea. So
Okay.
getting
Right.
getting
Yeah.
the plans from their website before I actually even dived into the actual community, the forums, right? So yeah, and then once I started getting a couple months in, crashed about half a dozen planes, got sick of doing all the crashing, not knowing why. The forums were like the next step to go into, right? So it was it was at that
Yeah.
point in time I was almost desperate. I was like, if this doesn't work for me, like I'm giving up the hobby. Like this is starting to get frustrating. My building skills are amazing because I built 6 of these, and my pilot skills aren't keeping up. I only got half the hobby going here, right? So
So what was your first? I guess what was your first FT plane that you built, and which is the one that you had success with? It sounds like they're different.
First one. What was the first one that I built? A lot of people like building the DR1 to begin with, but I built. There was one before this one, but this is what I remember. It could have been the Mini Scout that was the first one, and I failed with it, just probably a CG issue or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't say for sure. But I
Mm-hmm.
know there was an SE5 in there somewhere that was just
Okay,
there
yeah.
was that was just a miserable fail as well. So the first one that I actually did get up for a full battery pack would be the second build of the Mini Scout 3-channel RET. It was
Okay.
that was the one. I actually have a video of it. You'll see how happy I was. You couldn't slap the grin off my face. I was so happy I got a battery pack for it. No crashing.
Yeah, I think we each have that first flight story where we're like, it's
Yeah.
working.
So anybody asks you, if what
Nice.
would be a good first plane for me? There's a lot of people that have differing opinions, when they're on the flight test forums. I'm totally,
Mhm.
supporting the whole Mini Scout because that was my experience. I did try the tiny trainer. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people that love that tiny trainer. It just did
Mhm.
not work out for me. And I built two of them. There was the stock, and then there was a
Mhm.
customized one where people were saying, well, you got to move your servos, and
Right.
you change your wing incidence, that kind of stuff, and that kind of thing. So I
Sure.
played around with that, but it didn't work out for me either. So it's the Mini Scout that's got it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
It
It's
is
a
a
good
good plane.
plane.
It's a solid plane.
Well, switching gears a little bit, you live up in Canada, and so you get far more snow than we get. And I imagine you do have your dry no snow season. So how does as we don't get a ton of snow down here, how does snow uh you know having snow and then not having snow, like how does that impact your flying season and maybe how you fly?
Actually, in my first winter season, because I live out in the country here, there's a lot of farmland around, so having snow on the ground gave me unlimited access to runway space. So I started using a lot more more of the snow style landing gear. Floats are big. They're nice and buoyant on top of snow, and they take a beating. So that's perfect. Keeps the plane nice and draggy too, so it slows it down. Um, Floats really work out that way really well. So that's one way. I've played around with skis. Um, I find those to be really catchy on the edge. So if you're not sticking your landings nice and straight, you're coming in a little crabwise, or you know kind of off angle, not exactly horizontal to the plane of the ground kind of idea, then you're going to catch an edge. You're gonna roll over. But I found floats to be really successful on snow.
Okay.
Well, speaking of floats, because I do want to, like Matthew and I talked before, I do want to build the Sea Duck and have it so that I can do, say, water takeoff and water landing. And I know water's going to be different than snow, but how precise maybe do you have to be with those landings, or can you come in and maybe, like, obviously you're not going to be able to come in nose down, you're going to catch the front of your skis, but can you come in tail low and kind of catch the back of the skis and set them down, or do you really have to grease those landings?
Well, if you're talking about the Sea Duck, actually, the Sea Duck has those outrigger things, and if you're going to use those, if you're going to use that plane directly on snow or any sort of grass or any of that kind of stuff, I would say leave the outriggers off. If you're going to use it on water, you need those outriggers for sure. But those, yeah,
Right.
if you're talking about the Sea Duck specifically, right? But as far as like just any float plane goes, as far as landing them on water, man, I really I really haven't done any water takeoffs or landings yet, and I really want to do them. But as far as snow goes, snow is very forgiving, and if you build your landing gear right, like your struts, and they're able to take a bit of a hit, then I mean, you can, you could totally miss the landing and come in and make it look good, right? So it's they're a lot of fun. With the
Okay.
Sea Duck is great because you're not worried about like struts or anything that are holding floats and like supports or anything. It just lands on the belly of the plane, and it's still, you can taxi it around, right? So it's
Right.
you could totally grease that thing, absolutely, for sure. It's meant to be sloppy. It You could bring it in, you could bring it in precision military style. Like I've one of the flying fields that I'm at in the summertime, it's really it's narrow but it's long, and so on the lengthwise, I've mowed myself about a 30-foot by 12-foot wide runway. It's kind of like fly around the sea duck and land it on like an aircraft carrier kind of size of, scale wise. It's not
Yeah.
easy. Put out, say,
Right.
8 hula hoops in a row, 2 rows of them side by side, and land on them consistently, kind of idea, right? So, I mean,
It's
that's a
not
lot of
easy.
fun, right? So there's that. You could totally grease the sea duck. There's a lot of planes like the Sportster. I probably could, like, it's got wheeled landing gear. There's no way I'd be able to land it on that and keep it on the runway, like being a tail dragger, that kind of thing. Like, it's just, there's my skill level. I'm sure there's people that could do it, but there's just no way. There'd be a lot of touch and goes before I'd feel confident to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
it was coming down consistently, right? So yeah, Sea
Right.
Duck's a great
Right.
plane. Great, it's awesome. If you're gonna start out early with a twin,
Yeah.
the Sea Duck would be the one to do it with.
Well,
That's a
let me
good one.
piggyback off of that real quick, Matthew, before you go for the
Yeah.
other ones.
Good.
Speaking of all that, how often do you get out to fly?
Um, I have it all depends on the weather. We get a really mixed bag of weather here. Of course, you guys probably get it around the East Coast, like the Carolinas there, but it's I could fly right out my back door. So I mean, I could fly 6, 8 packs a day if I wanted to, kind of thing, right? And yeah.
Wow.
So I mean, there's that possibility. I could drive 2 minutes away from here and, have wide open field where I could just open something right up. You know what I mean? It's do some nice high speed, low
Right.
passes, that kind of thing. So, man, I could fly 7 days a week if I wanted to, if the weather allowed me.
Basically, if it's not raining, chances are you're
Like,
flying.
the possibility is there. It doesn't mean I am, but yeah, the possibility is there.
All right.
Um, nice. So you're in Canada. Obviously, you are Canadian at heart. Does that mean that you're partial to Canadian liveries? Like if you had a there's the de Havilland Vampire. I think that was it. Why can't I think of the name of the group? Anyway, they sell it with a Canadian livery. Are you like, I'm in because they have a Canadian livery?
Yeah, actually, if that was the case, if they had like a de Havilland that was British, like the Vampire that was a British version and a Canadian, I'd definitely choose the
Mm-hmm.
Canadian version for sure. I gotta represent a
Yeah.
little bit, man.
If it has a Canadian,
you know, I gotta get the coverage out there.
right? Yeah, yeah. If it has a Canadian livery, is it like one of those? Oh, I have to get it because it has one.
No, just because it has a
Or
Canadian, it looks cool. Yeah, I'd want it, but it's not like I'm addicted to it. No, that kind of thing.
no, okay, that's fair. Canadian Bacon. Did they have it right? The movie
Yeah,
Canadian
I know the
Bacon.
movie.
In your experiences, are Canadians as polite as that movie
I
says
don't.
they
Oh,
are?
well, I don't know. I haven't met any of them, so I don't point one out to me. I don't know. It kind of depends on where you live. Like, I
Okay.
mean, maybe I'm used to it, and I'm not used to, like, are we more polite? Maybe I haven't lived in Europe or the States or anything. Like, I've been down to the States, and I've been there on vacation, like touristy sort of places. So yeah, everybody's having a good time. So I was treated very well, and I
Yeah.
really didn't really see much of it, or I was treated the way I'm used to being treated, kind of idea, right? So I really didn't see much of a difference.
Okay.
But
Right.
yeah, no, I get the bird every once in a while,
That's
so we're not all please and thank you, right? So
okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so we talked about how often you fly and your season. What kind of place do you fly from? Like, do you fly in a park, a yard, flying field? Like, where do you tend to
um,
go?
I go to places that are close. Like I said, I mean, depending on the size of the plane, the smaller stuff I can hand launch right out of my backyard and fly above the trees, kind of idea. I live on an acreage, so my backyard is about an acre, kind of idea, and then my neighbors
Mhm.
on either side of me, they're just empty lots, and they got 2 acres each. So I got like 6 acres of flying space right over my property.
Oh yeah,
Plus, I got the gravel road that's out front of the place, which makes an excellent runway. There's actually a clearing that opens up the intersection so people can see who's coming and who's not. So it's a perfect takeoff
yeah,
zone. Usually it's sided on either side by trees, so it's the first 30 feet are got a lot of good wind sort of coverage, blockage, that kind of thing. So it kind of makes things
Okay.
easy there. But if I want to go out, to a field or something like that, man, and like I said, 2 minute drive, and I got like 10 acres in front of me, that is just wide open, no trees, that kind of thing, right? So I'll go down to the river. I'll go down to the riverbank. I got I think a couple videos actually on my YouTube channel where I'm down at the river.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
ask
yeah,
you
yeah.
about that.
So yeah, lots
Uh,
of fun there. I'm looking for more locations, actually, more locations to film at that are going to be interesting. There's a bridge that I'd like to play around with, but it's kind of a highway bridge, and I don't think traffic people might not like that, flying around and over a bridge,
yeah,
doing
that could be
doing loops
distracting.
over their cars. They're doing
Yeah.
80 kilometers across this bridge, kind of idea. But
Well, just yeah. Please don't cause an
yeah,
accident,
I
right?
mean, I might crash a plane into the
Um,
bridge or something like that, and then it's my plane. I'd be out of plane, right? So it's over a river, it'd be gone.
yeah, definitely for sure. Speaking of over a river, have you used that lake or the river that you go down to? Have you tried to use that to take off of the water or
I've
thought
definitely
about it?
thought about it, man. I do so want to. There's areas of that river where the river slows down, like little eddy pools and stuff like that. The place that I go to, there's a lot of people that
Okay,
swim around there. So in the summertime, it's kind of too populated to be doing that.
pretty full.
A lot of times I'll take the
Yeah.
bellylanders out there, but the entire landscape around the river in like the beach area that we're at, it's not like soft sand, it's not like grass, it's river rock, right? So but
Yeah, it's
belly
river
landing on river
rocks.
rock isn't too formidable to your props,
No,
right? So
not forgiving.
I'll usually belly land them in the trees. Like there's these every once in a while you're walking down the beach, you'll find like a patch that's probably about, I don't know, 50 feet long of these 10-foot tall, like very leafy sort of like bushes, and I'll just belly land, or I'll just belly
Okay.
flop the plane into that, and then shake it out of the tree, and then change the battery and toss it back up again, right? So yeah, it's kind of where it works out there.
Okay. Yeah. So in my experience, and I haven't had a lot of experience of flying off of water, you don't need much depth wise to make it
That's
work.
what I understand too. Yeah,
I Yeah, I flew off of like a temporary puddle,
I saw that.
and
I
the
saw
temporary
that.
puddle, I would have been maybe at the deepest part ankle deep, and it was plenty to get that the Sea Angel, I think it
Hmm.
was, off the water. It's awesome. If you get a chance to fly off of a darn puddle,
Yeah,
do it. You'll
yeah.
enjoy it. That goes for both of you guys.
All right.
Okay, well, so then I guess one of the last questions we have is like, what transmitters have you used? And do you think you've kind of come and settled on one, or are you still kind of looking at what might be out there, or what kind of feature might sway you to get a different one?
Oh man, this is a loaded question, really. I mean, I've had the Spectrum Police after me for this one, man. It's wow. You're really nailing me to the board here, buddy. Putting me on the
No,
spot.
what do you mean? Look, I as a noob, okay, so here's the deal. Like as a noob, one of the biggest questions most noobs have is like, what transmitter do I get? Because it's one of the biggest expenses you're going to have. It lasts you the longest, I think, in the
Yeah,
hobby,
it's
right?
the bread
Like
and
you
butter.
you can buy a plane and it'll be done in a week, but the transmitter will stick with you, right? Like, so everybody wants to know, well, what should I get, right? And I want to know what your experiences are.
Okay,
Is really
what you
what
should
I'm
get is not
kind
what
of
I
aiming
started
for.
with. It was well, go ahead and do it. Disagree with me, it's fine. I'm sure you'll get comments about this, but I was talked into buying the DXE. Because like again, I walked into the hobby store and I
Okay,
was just so noob. They were just like, hey, whatever, this guy, he's gonna either crash it and it's gonna end up in the closet
this is
like
gonna be great.
90% of the people that walk in here, or he's gonna you
Mm-hmm.
just give him something kind of thing. And it was the Spectrum DXE, and it was for what it was and for what it did for the year that I had it. I definitely learned a
Mm-hmm.
lot about transmitters, how they work, that kind of thing, the programming. It's basic stuff, but it's stuff you wouldn't have gotten if it was just you got like you're ready to fly sort of situation, right? It's a little bit more involved. You get to
Right.
customize it a little bit, and it was great that way. For me though, man, I just had problems with losing signal on it all the time, right? And it was just my experience. There's a lot of people that I
Right.
talked to.
I
I remember
remember.
you talking
There's a
about
lot of
that.
people that I talked to, and they're like, I've never had an issue, and I just stuff my receivers into my plane, and there's like wires all, it's a rat's nest in there, and I'm like, I'm the guy because of the experiences that I've had of losing signal, a situation where I started getting frustrated with it because I knew it wasn't my fault, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
looking at,
Right.
aftermarket receivers and going through $350 Spectrum specific receivers and that kind of
Ugh.
stuff, I just started getting frustrated with the situation, right? So time to look for a new protocol. That's kind of what I diagnosed it down to, doing the research, that kind of thing. It's looking at what other people are using, right?
Yeah.
So this is around the time after about a year in that you started seeing like the Jumper T16 coming out,
Yeah, and the
Open
jumper
TX.
T8s and all that were getting
Yeah.
big kudos because they could bind to everything.
Yeah, and they have the 4-in-1 protocols, the external units, and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. There's you could play around with whatever you want. Buy Fly Sky receivers for $15. Buy Radio Master receivers for $12. Buy well, you
Yeah.
could do whatever sort of protocol you wanted to on there. There's what, like 50 different types of receivers you could bind to this thing.
Exactly.
Anyway, that stuff started coming out.
It's a number.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of room to experiment there. So I just wanted to see if my theory was right and the price was right, and then
Hmm.
the Radio Master stuff come out, right? So I'd already ordered actually a Jumper T16, and the order was taking a long time because they couldn't fulfill it. I'd been waiting for 3 months for them to even ship it, and then there's another 4 to 6 weeks to get it after shipping, right?
Oh man.
So in the time that I
Hmm.
was waiting for this order to be fulfilled before shipment, the Radio Master
Hmm.
came out. You're seeing the comparison videos, and I'm like, and it's,
Yeah.
30, 40, $50 cheaper. I still
Hmm.
have time to cancel my order and get the Radio Master. So that's what I went with. I've been using the Fly Sky protocols. I've just started using the Radio Master receivers. So they're FR Sky. I think they're FR Sky protocols with the
I
Radio
can't
Masters.
remember, but
Yeah.
could be.
So yeah, I've been playing around with those, and I've had a lot of success. Never had an issue with losing signal. The OpenTX thing, I think, has gotten a lot of recognition given the jumper had come out at that point in time. So I was really getting interested in that as well when I was looking to change from the Spectrum, and that
Hmm.
was really intriguing,
Right.
and it kind of opened up a whole, bunch of new doors that the DXE could not offer for the right price, right? So.
Right.
But there's
Absolutely.
this is what happened. Like, this is why the whole Spectrum Police thing came up, is because I was leaving the whole Spectrum, idea and
Yeah.
mentality, right? And they're
You
like,
you
oh,
can't
you,
leave the
you need to
group.
get yourself you need to get yourself a DX6 or a DX8, that kind of stuff. They're way better. And
Right.
well,
Yeah.
if you can't get your economy model to work right, why am I going to buy a more expensive model in the same
Right.
brand when I have so many other options out there for a cheaper price, right? So that
Yeah.
was
Exactly.
that was that was kind of where I went with that, right? Now that was the only reason I did. I just thought it was a smart move, as a consumer, somebody that's
Hmm.
looking for that success, right? And yeah, I was
Exactly.
kind of being on the forums. I was like, yeah, I'm picking up the Radio Master, and people were like, what? No Spectrum? What you trader and all that kind of stuff. And it just really got ridiculous, right? So yeah, I
I
don't
laugh.
I'm not, I run the Radio Master. Shh, don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
You know what
No,
I mean?
that's good. Look, be proud of it, right? Like, look, I think what it comes down to, and this is anytime somebody spends a lot of money on something, they're going to be behind their choice, right? Like, you spend a lot of money on your car, and people are diehard whatever type of car they drive. Like, just, yes, this is the best car ever. Well, yeah, you spent thousands of dollars on it. Of course, you're going to be behind it. You should. Like, you should be confident in what you purchase, right? And for this hobby, some of the bigger purchases you have are going to be your transmitter. So, and it's the thing that sticks with you. So, yeah, it's naturally people are going to kind of say, no, I made the right choice. And you know what? And if it's working for you, it's the right choice. Cool.
Yeah,
I know for you,
absolutely.
Chris, it wasn't working for you at all. Like, it was causing all sorts of troubles and making you wonder if you should even continue in the hobby and all sorts of stuff. And I'm glad you went and said, you know what? I'm going to try this new thing. All the reviews kind of give it what I'm looking for. Let me try it. And, it's been positive so far, I think, right?
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. There's no question about that.
I mean, I know Joe just recently tried his hand with whether you have a Radio Master now, right? Or at least your father-in-law has it that he's working with you with?
I have the Radio Master. It's actually my dad anteed up to
Right.
buy that one for he and I being able to go out and fly. So it's sitting here with me. I've got one kind of flight on it. So I can't speak to it a whole lot other than the functionality is probably going to be good. I've spent a lot of time in the menus. I can say that. The
Well, you'll be able
just...
to take a look at it.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, you'll be able to look at it and be able to see the differences between the two, right? Like the Turnigy you have is like the early model of what that ended up becoming way down the way, right?
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to being able to fly the Radio Master more and figure out a lot of the stuff. And I know that you can load OpenTX or flash OpenTX onto the Turnigy, but that was just a mod that I wasn't ready to undertake yet. Purchasing a board and having to open the case and modify the case and solder it in and then flashing firmware and de-brick the transmitter. So I may do it one day when I'm a little more confident with all that.
Do they actually change the display screen when they do that mod? Do they go to the color screen or is it still the LCD? What is it?
I'm not 100% sure because I've only briefly looked into it. I think you're probably still utilizing the same screen. You may be able to go to a color screen on it. I don't know. To be honest with you, I think we just put in the chip that's needed to be able to flash. I think there's a mod with it to include an SD card, so of course you can load up your OpenTX stuff.
Okay.
So there's a couple of internal mods because it wasn't really built for it at the time. It's got its firmware and you're kind of flashing a new thing onto it. So you got to add in the flashing chip or programming chip, and then you're soldering in an SD card for expanded storage, and then you got to cut out the side of the case to accept a USB port to be able to plug it into your computer to do the work. But again, I only briefly looked into it.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like it might be worth doing if it's a good transmitter.
I very much like my Turnigy. I've only had a couple signal issues, two of which I've had 3 signal issues, 2 of which I can attribute to Wi-Fi in the area, and I've talked about that before. The third one was with the old fogey. I was out in front of my old school. There should have been no reason, but the plane just quit responding, it seemed. So I don't know exactly what that issue was. It could have been that I kind of took a shortcut and didn't arrange the receiver antennas in an appropriate way. I may have had the antenna on the transmitter pointed directly at the plane, in which case, you're kind of in that donut dead spot. So I'm not entirely sure on that one.
That Wi-Fi issue, actually, with the OpenTX, you can actually, in your system, you can go in and it'll give you a scan
analysis.
Spectrum analysis. Yeah, give you a scan of the noise that you have, interference in your area.
So you make sure you keep away from it. That's nice.
That'll be worth figuring out how to do so I can actually scan an area before I fly in it.
Absolutely, it's pretty accurate. Like out here, I've scanned the areas out here. I got nothing out here. I mean, I'm in the country. I'm flatlined the whole way, right? But I'll turn it on and say, like inside a hobby store in Edmonton, in the city, and you can just see this thing. Like it's got spikes all over the place, right? So it's definitely accurate. It tells you within your scope, your 2.4 gigs, what's out there, right? Or not exactly what's out there, but how noisy it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a nice feature.
Nice.
Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap this episode up here. We want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening, and we hope you've enjoyed it. Apologies for the unusual ending of this episode, but as discussed earlier, next episode, Matthew and I will share some more flight stories, and then we will be getting back into our discussions with Chris and talk about coverings. So until next time, take care.